Okay, I'm starting a project of putting a couple of 5th gen G8 seats that I just picked up. They're leather. They're really nice seats. I'm going to fit them, I hope, into my 2nd gen. I have measured all of the 4 bolts and everything, and boy, they're way different. They're wider and longer. I went and put studs in the floor where these guys are. Those are 5/16 18. So I'm going to try to fit these guys in it. Just for grins, you can just see how different those things are. This is passenger seat against passenger seat. See how much wider those brackets are. And these guys are longer. So I've got to cut these pieces off on all 4 corners, fit the rail in the floorboard of the car, level it, and then measure the gaps to the floor, and then fabricate brackets to fit on it. A couple of things to be wary of. This guy right here, I cut this front bracket off right here, and I punched this thing out right here. This right here is part of the secure system for the rail that this thing rides up and down on. Now I've got this thing hooked up to a battery, not a battery, but a power. You can see how this thing runs up and down. And right in there, the track that this thing rides on, this stud right here that goes through, I'm going to have to tack weld this back in. I didn't realize when I drilled it out. But this one is in the back. This one right here is what hooks into that. And strangely enough, they provide some things. I don't know if these indentations in here are guides for cutting this bracket off or not. I used it, which saves this guy. I'll have to drive this one out, but then I'll remove that bracket and that bracket and that bracket and that bracket, and we'll see how this project goes. Supposedly, talking to the guy who does a lot of LS3 swaps and things in all kinds of cars, that these G8 seats and 5th gen Camaro seats are exactly the same. In fact, his comment was that a G8 is nothing more than a 4-door Camaro. So pretty much everything fits out of one directly into the other one. So we'll see how this goes. I'm excited to get these in here. I like power seats. The other thing that was pointed out is that you got all kinds of connectors over here. From what I understand, this right here goes to the airbags that are still in the seat, so I'm not doing anything with that stuff. But this right here is for, I don't know if it's for memory. There's heated seats and all kinds of stuff. Really all I'm interested in is the movement, the motion up and down. So all of this other stuff, I think this probably goes to a connector that goes to the BCM, the computer in the new cars, and it does all kinds of happy stuff. It may remember where you set your seat and then put it back like my son's Corvette does. But anyway, that's where I am so far. I'll bring you back when I have more. Next step is finished up. I have removed all of the bracketry from the front and back of these rails. And you can see right here where this stud right here goes in and holds the channel, the rack that the seat slides back and forth on. I left that intact, and I did the same thing up here. These have cut off. This one I did go back and tack weld that spot on there, so let's see if you can see the rack. There. See the rack there, and it comes down And that's where that rack terminates on that thing that goes through with the stud that was holding that bracket on the bottom. So I cut that out, left that one intact, and I cut this one off. I'm going to have to go back and tack weld the bottom of that where it came through the bracket. But what I used to get through all those is, of course, a cutter to slice through the metal, and center punch, and these brackets right here where they had those pressed in studs or those rivets through them. I center drilled them starting small. I ended up with a 27/64, I think, was the final one, that I cut it down just to the surface of the bracket. I cut it down just to the surface. Then I can grab pliers after I'd cut the side off of them and peel that off of them. And I actually used, these are spot weld drills, and that did a pretty good job. I center punched one of them and I ran this spot weld drill through it, and that's the one I did that with, and that worked out okay. These were fairly inexpensive. They came from eBay, where I get a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, now the brackets are done, and I'm ready to move on to setting this inside the car and seeing what I'm gonna have to do to line them up and design and fabricate some brackets to fit it to the floor pan. And then once I get this one done, I'll move over to the driver's side. By then I should know what I'm doing. I'm stabbing in the dark right now. Got the passenger seat just sitting in the car, and what I've done, I've made some wooden shims to lift them up. I've got them up exactly, those shims are exactly 1 inch thick. Got 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And I did that because what I have on hand is some steel bar. It's 1 inch by 2 inch. It's an 1/8 inch wall. And I've discovered that cutting one side out of these things like this fits exactly over the rail. Let me get one of these and put it down here. I don't know if you can see this or not. Oh, there is one on there already. So where the hell is it? There it is. That rail fits down inside that channel perfectly. That's what I'm planning on doing, is welding that rail to the bottom to that channel. Now, I don't know if you can see it or not. Shit. Come on. Right here is a hole that holds a seat bracket, and right over here is the other one. I got a stud sitting in that one. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I put a 5/16, 18 stud in that hole. But my plan is to slide this down the rail, weld it to the side, take another piece of this material that doesn't have the top cut out and run it sideways and bolt it to these holes. I think that'll work. So what I'm doing, on my mill, I'm just cutting the top off. That's just WD-40 on there, cutting fluid. It's heating up pretty good. That's a 3/8 inch roughing mill from the milling machine. Tell you what, I'll go ahead and finish cutting that and bring you back. Okay, I'll cut the top off. There's the top out of both of them there. One of these has got the weld rib down the center. I dropped the cutter bit down low enough. I'm going to go ahead and cut that weld out. Make it reasonably well flush with the side. It won't be perfect, but it won't be bad. Fine, really. Okay, that should be welded up, taken out completely. I will clean that up, vacuum up all the debris, deburr it, wire brush it so it looks like this one, and then we'll be ready to start the next process. Okay, I've got the rails mocked up. This is how I intend to do this, I think. This is a 1 inch by 2 inch tube. The hole in the floor is right here, so it will be drilled to fit that. This is a 6 inch long 1 inch by 2 inch channel that I've made out of that, and it will be welded. This will be welded to the rail back in here. Same thing on this side. This will be welded to this, and this will be welded to the channel underneath there, and that should come out straight. So that's my plan, and then I'll drill a hole here to match the hole in the floor there to mount it, and this guy here will have a hole in him to match up to the stud down there. So this is leaning too far back because my shims came off the back of it. This is how it should all fit. That's a little 30 amp Chinese power supply I use to hook up to the power and ground. The orange wire there is the power, and the black wire there is the ground, and that power supply right there runs this whole thing, and it works like a champ. That's the only thing that's hooked up out of all that mess of wires that goes to the BCM on one of these later model cars. All I needed was power and ground to run this switch right here. And it runs everything. Goes up, goes down, goes forward, goes backwards, and that's what I wanted. So on to the next step. Okay, these are the brackets after I have shaped them. I have cut the top out of both of these. These are 6 inches long. These will become the bottom brackets for the passenger seat. This one will get welded just like that, and then this piece right here welded underneath the bottom of the rail on the outside. This one will be welded to this one just like that, and then this piece will be welded to the inside rail of the car. These came out pretty good. They were real rusty. I put them in the vapor rust, left them overnight. I put them, had like a half-gallon jug of milk that was empty. I filled it up with vapor rust and dropped these things in it, left it overnight, and these things came out pretty doggone good. I went ahead and chamfered both ends of it where this will fit against the floor, because there's curvature on the floor that they have to negotiate. So that was fairly simple. But anyway, that's where I am right now. I've got these brackets mocked up. I drilled and tapped some holes on them just to screw them together to fit them under here to see how they're going to fit. And let's see if I can point this out. Crap. Okay, this right here is the rail to the seat, and this right here is the piece that I cut out of the 1x2 channel, and this is a piece out of the 1x2 channel, and this piece will be welded to this piece, and the distance from here to the leading edge of this channel is 4 1/4 inches, and it's the same on both sides. I think that's going to work out okay. What I ended up with this seat all the way back, I've got 6 inches of distance between the front edge of the back seat and the back of the backrest, when the backrest is set pretty much at the same angle as the driver's seat over there, which is the original one. Now when this thing pulls forward, it goes pretty good ways. Wish I had better light in here. But anyway, this thing, it moves up pretty good ways. It's that close to the dashboard. And that's pretty close. I think that's going to work out. And these guys back here, you can see, I think you can see, that's the screw in the floor, and that's the screw in the floor, and this seat will scoot back and forth to where it's basically the same distance from the center of this rail to the center of that screw. And I think I can just weld a small bracket on the bottom of it that's got a screw hole in it to line up with both of those, and that's gonna work out pretty well. And I'll have to make some covers for the back of these rails so people don't cut their feet up on them sitting in the back seat, if anybody ever sits in the back seat, which I don't think I've ever had anybody in the back seat, and I've had this car 5 or 6 years now. This is cutting the top edge out of one of them. This piece right here will be used to make the final 2 brackets for the back of the seat. These guys, I think, are in. I just have to weld them to the seat brackets. Got studs coming up through the bottom on both of them. Next step is to weld all that stuff together and bolt it to the floor. Okay, those pieces finished cutting, and I cut it in half. These are 3 3/8 inches long each. They'll be used to fab the brackets to go to the back of the seats. And boy, these things are rusty as crap. You can see that. That's where I cleaned up the edges and deburred it. What I'm going to do, dump these in the vapor rust overnight. I've got this, I guess, half-gallon jug of what used to be milk there. This is my vapor rust, which I've used many times. You just keep cycling it through and through. I'll pour it just above the top. Let it sit overnight. There. This stuff's starting to get kind of dark. So I'll bring it over here. Set it next to 4-leaf clover. Gave my ex-wife for Mother's Day last night. I'll bring it back when that gets done tomorrow. It's next day, so we're going to pull this stuff out and take a look at it. It looks pretty dark still, but the vapor rust is also nice and dark. I'm going to set this camera up over here and rinse all this stuff off. And give a shot at it. Got this handy dandy little brass brush here. It came out pretty good. That thing was all crusty too. I mean, it was nasty. I'll probably put this on the big wire wheel on the grinder out of the garage. But anyway, took all that rust off. Awesome. Get the other one, if I can find it. We can get it. Okay, put this on here. It'll go back into the vapor bucket. This one's a little cruddier than the other one. I don't know why, it's not the same stock. Okay, here's this one too. Not too bad for the shape these things are in. They've been sitting out in my parts bin for years. These are pieces of steel rails that I took off of treadmills. I get the treadmills, pull the motor out of them, and use them for drives on my lathe or a small milling machine, excuse me, or drill press or whatever. With variable speed, they work great. So this is getting cleaned up after the wire wheel. Boy, that did a nice job. It's going to be easily weldable, I think. Now, let's go out here and check progress on the seats. I got them partially assembled here. They're actually stuck to the rails on the seat. Welded across here, and this one's welded here. That's the only place. You can see how well those things fit those existing channels, and this is a 1 by 2 inch square tube that I just cut the top out of, like these. These will be used in the back. But that's how they're going on. So I'm going to tack weld here, and then tack weld here, and then do a test fit and see if they work. I hope they do. If they don't, well, we'll just mod them up. No big deal. Put some light on it. That might make that better. Those screws that are holding those two pieces together, those are 1024s. They're just in there temporarily till I make sure that all the holes are going to line up and everybody's going to bolt down right. And once that's finished, once everything's set, I'll weld that stuff back together, make it permanent. I did run into a little snag here. Don't make fun of my welding. I'm not a welder. I can make stuff stick. It just ain't pretty. My welding has made me learn good skills on grinding and whatnot. Fitting this thing into the back of the car, this rail was fine. This rail right here was not. This is on the outside. It actually had this little flange right here that was welded to it, like that. So I took my little Harbor Freight grinder and cut that off. Now these things will fit on there fine. These will fit on here, and there will be a small bracket that comes from the center of this over to where the screws are in the back, and the same for this side. So that'll set two screw holes in the back, and those two screw holes in the front here line it up reasonably well. Now this guy right here gives me a little bit of a problem because of the way this rail fits against the tunnel, and where this screw hole is, that screw hits way back up under here, so I've got to kind of go underneath this guy right here to get to that nut, put that screw in there with a stud. This one's easy. He just lines right up. He's perfect. I wish both sides were like that, but they're not. But these two back here, once that bracket gets on there, the distance between the center to the stud and the center to where the stud is in the floorboard are the same, equidistant. So these up here are offset. I don't know why, they just are. But that's just part of the development of it.